The scream that tore through veil and velvet that night wasn't one of fear, it was rage, ancient and absolute, and it shattered every window on the block. Fiona Owens hadn't meant to catch anyone's attention when she'd walked into the upscale bar that Friday evening. She'd only wanted to celebrate finally landing her dream job at the Art Restoration Museum, a small personal victory after 2 years of relentless applications and rejections. Her best friend had canceled last minute, but Fiona refused to let that dampen her mood. She'd dressed in her favorite emerald dress, the one that made her feel confident and beautiful, and decided to treat herself to one of Veil and Velvet's famously expensive cocktails. The bar lived up to its reputation. Dark wood paneling gleamed under soft amber lighting, and velvet curtains in deep burgundy framed tall windows that overlooked the city's historic district. The crowd was elegant, dressed in clothes that whispered wealth rather than shouted it. Fiona felt slightly out of place but determined not to show it. She'd been seated at table 9. A small corner spot that gave her a perfect view of the entire establishment. The server, a young man with nervous hands, had taken her order with a practiced smile. When her midnight rose arrived, a stunning purple cocktail garnished with actual rose petals. Fiona had photographed it carefully before taking her first sip. It tasted like summer berries and something floral she couldn't quite identify. Delicious. She'd savored it slowly, watching the other patrons, imagining their stories. The couple near the window who couldn't stop touching each other's hands. The business meeting at the center table that looked increasingly tense. The striking woman at the bar whose white hair caught the light like spun silver. Fiona had been halfway through her drink when she'd noticed the man at the adjacent table watching her. Something about his stare made her skin crawl. When she'd excused herself to the restroom, she'd taken her clutch but left her drink. A mistake. A terrible, nearly fatal mistake. She'd returned 5 minutes later to find her cocktail exactly where she'd left it. Nothing seemed disturbed. But when she'd taken another sip, something felt different. The taste was slightly off, bitter underneath the sweetness. Fiona had frowned, setting the glass down. That's when the room started spinning. Terror flooded through her as she recognized what was happening. She tried to stand, tried to call for help, but her tongue felt thick and her legs wouldn't cooperate. The bar tilted sideways and she grabbed the table's edge, her vision blurring. Through the haze, she saw the man from the adjacent table standing, moving toward her with a smile that made her stomach turn. She tried to scream but only managed a whimper, and then the temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Fiona's drugged mind struggled to process what happened next. One moment the man was reaching for her, and the next he was flying backward through the air, crashing into the bar with such force that bottles exploded in a cascade of glass and liquor. Someone was standing between her and her attacker. No, not someone. The woman from the bar. The one with the white hair, except now Fiona could see her clearly, and her mind refused to accept what her eyes were showing her. The woman's skin was pale as moonlight, luminous and cold. Her hair wasn't just white, it was the color of fresh snow, falling in straight, perfect lines past her shoulders. But her eyes were what made Fiona's breath catch. They were crimson, bright as fresh blood, and they were burning with a fury that felt older than cities. How dare you? The woman's voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire bar, silencing every conversation. How dare you touch what is mine? Fiona's drugged mind latched onto those words, what is mine, but couldn't make sense of them. The man who drugged her was scrambling backward, blood running from his split lip. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She was silence. The woman moved, faster than anything human could move, and suddenly she had the man by his throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. Do you know who I am? The man's face was turning purple. He managed to choke out a single word. Valdez. Every person in the bar gasped. Some dropped to their knees. Others ran for the exits. Fiona tried to process the name through her swimming thoughts. Valdez. Why did that sound familiar? Say my full name, the woman Valdez commanded, her voice dropping to something dark and dangerous. Say it so everyone here understands the magnitude of your transgression. Lord Valdez Noctane, the man gasped. Vampire King of the Eastern Territories. The world tilted further sideways for Fiona. Vampire King. The words should have sounded ridiculous, like something from the gothic romance novels she secretly loved. But looking at the woman holding a grown man in the air with one hand, at the inhuman grace and fury radiating from her, at those burning red eyes, Fiona couldn't deny the truth of it. Valdez dropped the man and he crumpled to the floor, gasping. But she wasn't done. She turned to address the entire bar, and even drugged, Fiona could feel the power rolling off her in waves. This woman is under my protection, Valdez announced, her voice ringing with absolute authority. Anyone who harms her, who so much as thinks of harming her, will answer to me personally. And I assure you, my justice is not swift. Fiona tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but the drug was pulling her down into darkness. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel, and at the end of that tunnel was Valdez. turning back toward her, crimson eyes softening. "Fear not, little one," Valdis said, and then she was there, catching Fiona as her legs gave out. Those pale arms were cold but surprisingly gentle. "I have you, you're safe now." Safe, the word echoed in Fiona's fading consciousness. She should be terrified. A vampire was holding her, a vampire king. But instead she felt protected, cherished even. It made no sense. Through the roaring in her ears she heard Valdis speaking again, but this time her voice was nothing like the cultured, controlled tone she'd used before. This was raw, ancient, rage-given sound. "You drugged her. You dared to poison someone under the protection of the Noctane bloodline. For that I will take everything from you." The last thing Fiona saw before darkness claimed her was Valdis looking down at her, one pale hand brushing hair from her face with infinite tenderness. Then the Vampire King raised her other hand, and power exploded from her like a shockwave. The entire bar came apart, glass shattered, wood splintered, stone cracked. The sound was apocalyptic, a symphony of destruction that matched the fury in Valdis's eyes. Tables flew through the air, the bar itself split down the middle, bottles exploded in sequence like fireworks. The velvet curtains ignited with cold white flame that consumed without heat, and through it all, Valdis held Fiona against her chest, shielding her from every piece of flying debris, every fragment of the chaos she herself was creating. Fiona felt the vibrations of Valdis's voice through her chest as the Vampire King spoke, each word punctuated by another wave of destruction. "Never again will this place know peace. Never again will humans gather here without remembering what happens when you threaten what belongs to a vampire lord. Let this serve as a reminder to all who witness the Noctane family protects its own." Then everything went black. When Fiona woke, she was in a bed so soft it felt like floating on clouds. For a moment she lay there with her eyes closed, trying to piece together her memories. The bar, the drink, the terrible spinning sensation, the man with the predatory smile. And Valdis. Fiona's eyes flew open. She was in a bedroom that looked like something from a period drama. The bed she lay in was enormous, draped in midnight blue silk. The ceiling arched high above her, painted with constellations that seemed to move when she looked at them directly. Tall windows showed a night sky full of stars, but something about the view felt wrong, impossible to place. "You're awake." Fiona jerked upright, immediately regretting it as her head spun. Valdis was sitting in a chair beside the bed, perfectly still in the way that only predators could be. In the low light, her white hair seemed to glow, and those red eyes watched Fiona with an intensity that should have been frightening, should have been, but wasn't. "Where am I?" Fiona's voice came out hoarse. "What happened?" "The bar is no more," Valdis said calmly. "I destroyed it completely. The structure will have to be razed and rebuilt from foundation." Fiona stared at her. "You destroyed an entire building?" "I destroyed everything within a 3-block radius, actually." Valdis tilted her head, studying Fiona like she was a puzzle to be solved. "You were drugged with a substance meant to incapacitate you for violent purposes. The male responsible has been dealt with. You are now in my private residence, and you are safe." There was so much to unpack in those statements that Fiona didn't know where to start. She settled on the most pressing question. "Why? Why what, precisely? Why did you save me? Why do you keep saying I'm under your protection? I don't understand any of this." Valdis was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried weight, like she was admitting something significant. 3 months ago, you came to Veil and Velvet for the first time. You sat at the bar alone, reading a book about Renaissance art restoration while you drank terrible wine. Do you remember? Fiona's mind raced back. She did remember. She'd been celebrating getting an interview at the museum. The wine had been terrible. "You were there?" "I own that establishment," Valdis said. "Or owned, I suppose. I was conducting business when you walked in. I noticed you immediately." "Why?" Fiona asked again, feeling like it was the only question that mattered. Valdis stood, moving to the window with that inhuman grace. "Do you know anything about vampires, Fiona Owens?" The use of her full name made Fiona shiver. "Only what everyone knows. Stories, mostly. And apparently those stories are true, some of them. We are vulnerable to sunlight, yes. We require blood to sustain ourselves. We are stronger and faster than humans. We live for centuries." Valdis turned back to face her, and the moonlight caught her features, making her look like a statue carved from marble. "But there are things the stories don't tell you. Things most humans never learn." "Like what?" "Like the fact that vampires, true-born vampire lords especially, sometimes experience what we call a recognition." Valdis's expression shifted, becoming something almost vulnerable. "It is exceedingly rare. Most vampires live their entire existence without experiencing it. But when it happens, there is no mistaking it." Fiona's heart was beating faster. "What is it, this recognition?" "It is when a vampire encounters a soul that resonates with their own. A perfect complement, a completion of something fundamental." Valdis moved closer to the bed, and Fiona found herself unable to look away from those crimson eyes. When I saw you that first night, reading your book, completely absorbed in your own world, I felt it. Like lightning through every nerve. Like coming home after centuries of wandering. The romantic in Fiona wanted to swoon. The practical side demanded answers. That's insane. You don't even know me. I know you better than you think. Valdez sat back down in her chair, maintaining a respectful distance. I have watched you these past 3 months. Not in a predatory way, but in fascination. I have seen you help a tourist find their way when they were lost. I have watched you give your umbrella to a stranger in the rain. I have observed you spend an hour carefully moving a spider out of your apartment rather than harm it. You are kind, Fiona. Genuinely kind in a world that often punishes kindness. And you are brilliant. Your passion for art, for preservation, for beauty, it shines from you like sunlight. Fiona felt heat rising in her cheeks. You've been stalking me. I have been protecting you, Valdez corrected gently. And I have been trying to determine how to approach you. How does one introduce oneself to their potential mate when one is a centuries-old vampire lord, and the other is a human who likely believes vampires are fiction? Mate? Fiona's voice came out as a squeak. Valdez smiled, and it transformed her face from merely beautiful to absolutely stunning. The recognition is often mutual, though humans rarely understand what they're feeling. Tell me, Fiona, have you thought of me these past 3 months? Fiona wanted to lie, but something about those red eyes made dishonesty impossible. Yes, I kept going back to that bar hoping to see you again. I didn't understand why, I just felt drawn. That, Valdez said softly, is the recognition your soul calling to mine. This was insane, all of it. And yet, sitting in this impossible bedroom, talking to a woman who'd just admitted to being a vampire lord, Fiona couldn't deny the truth. She had been drawn to Valdez. From that very first glimpse, something had pulled at her, demanding attention. What happened to the man who drugged me? Fiona asked, not sure she wanted to know the answer. Valdez's expression went cold. He is alive, if that concerns you. I do not kill without cause, and his crime, while severe, did not warrant death. He is currently being held by vampire authorities. He will face trial for poisoning someone under noble protection, which carries a sentence of servitude lasting several decades. He will never again see freedom in the way he once knew it. Vampire authorities? There's a whole legal system. We are not savages, Fiona. We have lived alongside humanity for millennia. We have laws, governments, territories, and consequences for those who break our codes. Valdez leaned forward slightly. And one of our most sacred laws is this. When a vampire noble claims protection over someone, that claim is absolute. To harm that person is to declare war on the vampire's entire bloodline. But you claimed protection over me before tonight, didn't you? Fiona was starting to piece things together. That's why everyone in the bar reacted the way they did. They knew. The vampire community knew, yes. I made my claim publicly 2 months ago. Any vampire in this city understood that you were not to be touched, not to be hunted, not to be considered prey under any circumstances. Valdez's jaw tightened. Your attacker was human. He had no way of knowing about my claim, which is the only reason he still breathes. His ignorance saved his life. Fiona pulled the silk sheets closer around herself, needing something to hold on to while her world rearranged itself. This is a lot to process, I know. You are handling it with remarkable composure. I'm internally screaming, actually. Valdez smiled again, and Fiona's heart did a complicated flip. That is also valid. They sat in silence for a moment. Fiona's mind was racing, trying to organize everything she'd learned, everything she'd seen. A vampire lord had been protecting her for months, had destroyed an entire bar to keep her safe, was claiming they were meant to be together. It should have been terrifying. It should have sent her running for the door. Instead, Fiona found herself asking, what happens now? Now Valdez's red eyes softened. Now you have choices to make. You may leave if you wish. I will not hold you here. I will, however, continue to protect you. That claim is not something I can simply revoke, nor would I wish to. You are precious to me, whether you choose to accept my attentions or not. And if I don't leave, then I would very much like the opportunity to court you properly, Valdez said, and there was something almost nervous in her voice, something vulnerable that didn't match her regal bearing. To show you the world as I see it. To share with you the wonders that exist in the shadows. To prove to you that what exists between us is real and worth pursuing. Fiona should ask to leave. Should demand to go home, to return to her normal life, to forget all of this. But when she looked at Valdez, at the hope carefully concealed behind that composed expression, she found herself saying something entirely different. I'd like that. The courting, I mean. But I need to understand more. About you, about your world, about what all of this means. The smile that spread across Valdez's face was radiant. I will tell you everything, answer every question, hide nothing from you. She stood gracefully. But first you should eat. The drug has left your system, but you need sustenance. I will have food brought up. Wait, Fiona said as Valdez moved toward the door. How long was I unconscious? 18 hours. I had a vampire healer attend to you to ensure the drug left no lasting damage. You are healthy, I promise. 18 hours. Fiona's phone must be exploding with missed calls and texts. I need to contact people. My parents, my friends. They'll be worried. Already handled. While you slept, I had my assistant contact your emergency contacts with a cover story about you being ill and staying with a friend. I hope that was not too presumptuous. A little presumptuous, Fiona admitted. But thank you, I think. Valdis inclined her head. I will return shortly with food. There are clothes in the wardrobe if you wish to change. They should fit. After she left, Fiona sat in the enormous bed, trying to process everything. She was in a vampire lord's home. She'd been claimed as a mate through some supernatural recognition bond. Her normal life had just become decidedly paranormal. And the most shocking part? She wasn't sure she wanted to go back to normal. Fiona climbed out of bed, pleased to find her legs steady. She was still wearing her emerald dress, though someone had removed her shoes. The wardrobe Valdis had mentioned was actually a walk-in closet the size of Fiona's entire bedroom, filled with clothes that ranged from casual to formal, all in her size. She selected soft black pants and a deep red sweater, marveling at the quality of the fabric. Everything in this place screamed wealth and refinement. She was exploring the attached bathroom, which featured a marble tub large enough to swim in, when Valdis returned carrying a tray. I wasn't certain what you'd prefer, so I brought variety, Valdis said, setting the tray on a small table near the window. Soup, bread, fruit, cheese, tea, all human appropriate. Fiona sat down, suddenly ravenous. The soup was divine, some kind of vegetable broth with herbs she couldn't identify. As she ate, Valdis sat across from her, watching with an expression that made Fiona blush. Do you need to eat? Fiona asked between bites. Or is it just blood? We can consume regular food, but it provides no real sustenance. It's more for pleasure and social convention than necessity. Valdis poured tea for Fiona with practiced grace. Blood is what keeps us alive and maintains our powers. How does that work? Do you hurt people? No. Valdis's voice was firm. There are ethical sources. Blood banks, willing donors, and of course, we pay extremely well for fresh donations. Any vampire who feeds without consent faces severe punishment from our governing council. We learned long ago that coexistence with humanity requires respect and boundaries. Fiona nibbled on bread, processing this. Tell me about yourself. Not just vampire facts, you. Valdis seemed surprised by the question, then pleased. I was born in what is now Romania in the year 1247. I was turned at age 28 by the vampire who ruled our region, and I served under her for 3 centuries before challenging her for territory. I won, obviously, and became Lord of the Eastern Territories, which encompasses most of what humans call the American East Coast. You're over 700 years old? 779 to be precise. Fiona tried to wrap her mind around that span of time. What was it like, living through all that history? Fascinating, terrible, beautiful, all of it. Valdis's expression grew distant. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched humanity accomplish wonders and commit atrocities. I have lost friends to sunlight and time and stupid conflicts. I have accumulated wealth and power and influence, and yet until 3 months ago I felt profoundly alone. Until you saw me, Fiona said softly. Until I saw you. Valdis's red eyes focused on her with laser intensity. And suddenly, after centuries of existing, I remembered what it felt like to truly live, to want something beyond territory and politics, to hope. Fiona's chest felt tight. This is a lot of pressure, you know. Being someone's hope after 7 centuries. I don't mean to pressure you, Valdis said quickly. Your feelings are your own, and they will develop or not at their own pace. I am simply being honest about mine. I appreciate that. Fiona finished her tea, considering her next words carefully. I feel something when I look at you. I felt it that first night, and it scared me because it was so immediate, so intense. I've never experienced anything like it, and now, knowing there's a supernatural explanation, it's both reassuring and terrifying. What frightens you most? That this isn't real, that it's just some vampire magic compelling me to feel things I wouldn't naturally feel. Valdis shook her head firmly. The recognition does not create feelings, Fiona. It simply reveals compatibility. Your attraction, your emotions, they are entirely your own. The recognition merely highlighted what could be, not what must be. You have complete free will in this. Okay, that's good. Fiona took a deep breath. Then I want to try this courtship thing. But I need it to go slow. I need time to adjust to all of this. Slow, Valdis repeated as if tasting the word. I can do slow. I have waited over 700 years for you, Fiona Owens. I can wait a little longer for you to be ready. The next few weeks were the strangest of Fiona's life. She returned to her apartment but found Valdis waiting outside her building each evening when she came home from work. The vampire lord would walk her upstairs, check her apartment thoroughly, and then leave unless Fiona invited her to stay. Fiona always invited her to stay. They would sit on Fiona's worn couch, drinking tea, or in Valdis's case, pretending to drink tea and talk for hours. Valdis told stories about history that no textbook contained, about meeting Mozart and finding him insufferable, about the night the Titanic sank, and the frantic rescue efforts that vampires had secretly coordinated. She spoke about vampire politics with a mixture of fondness and exasperation, about the constant territorial disputes and power plays that governed supernatural society. In return, Fiona talked about her childhood, her love of art, her dreams of one day curating her own exhibition. She spoke about losing her grandmother, who'd raised her to believe in magic and romance and happy endings. About her fear that she wasn't good enough, smart enough, talented enough to make a real difference in the world. Valdis listened to every word like it was scripture. "You are extraordinary," the vampire lord said one night, about 3 weeks into their courtship. They were sitting close together on the couch, not quite touching but nearly so. "Your grandmother was wise to raise you believing in magic. You carry it within you." "I'm just ordinary," Fiona protested. Compared to me, you are a blazing star," Valdis interrupted. "Do you know what happens to vampires after centuries of life, Fiona? We become cold, distant. We forget how to feel wonder because we have seen everything, but you look at the world with fresh eyes every day. You find beauty in small things. You feel deeply and love freely. That is the most extraordinary magic I have ever witnessed." Fiona felt tears prickling her eyes. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it makes me want to kiss you, and I'm supposed to be taking things slow." The words hung in the air between them. Valdis went very still, and her red eyes darkened to something almost black. "Fiona, yes? If you wish to kiss me, I would very much welcome it." Fiona's heart was pounding. "Really? I have wanted to kiss you since the moment I first saw you," Valdis admitted. "But I was waiting for you to be ready. If you are ready now, I am absolutely willing to abandon my patient approach." Fiona laughed, nervous and excited. "You're still going to be patient. I just want to kiss you. That's it. For now, that's it." Valdis agreed, but her expression suggested that a kiss was far from simple. Fiona leaned in slowly, giving Valdis time to pull away if she wanted. But the vampire lord remained perfectly still, letting Fiona close the distance at her own pace. Their lips met softly, tentatively, and Fiona felt electricity sing through her entire body. Valdis's lips were cool but soft, moving against Fiona's with a gentleness that seemed at odds with her powerful nature. When Fiona deepened the kiss, Valdis made a sound low in her throat, and her hand came up to cup Fiona's face with infinite care. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, though Fiona suspected Valdis didn't actually need to breathe, Valdis rested her forehead against Fiona's. "That was worth waiting 7 centuries for," Valdis whispered. Fiona laughed breathlessly. "That was worth risking a lot for. You risk nothing with me," Valdis promised. "I will never hurt you, Fiona. I would destroy the world first. I believe you. Which should probably concern me more than it does." They kissed again and again until Fiona was dizzy with it. Eventually, Valdis pulled back, smoothing Fiona's hair with tender fingers. "I should let you rest," the vampire lord said reluctantly. "You work tomorrow." "Stay," Fiona said impulsively. "Not for anything other than company. I just don't want you to go yet." Valdis's expression softened impossibly further. "Then I will stay. Where would you like me?" "The couch is fine. I'll get you blankets." They ended up on opposite ends of the couch, Fiona wrapped in blankets and Valdis sitting upright, ever vigilant. Fiona fell asleep to the sight of Valdis watching over her with an expression of pure devotion. When Fiona woke in the morning, Valdis was gone, but there was a note on the coffee table written in elegant script. "Good morning, my starlight. I will return this evening. Have a wonderful day at work. Ever yours, Valdis." Fiona pressed the note to her chest, smiling like an idiot. Work that day was difficult to focus on. Fiona kept touching her lips, remembering the kiss, feeling like a teenager with her first crush. Her co-workers noticed her distraction, and when pressed she admitted she was seeing someone. "Tell us everything," her colleague Marcus demanded over lunch. "Who is she? What does she do?" "Her name is Valdis and she's in real estate," Fiona said, using the cover story Valdis had suggested. "She's wonderful, intense, protective, incredibly romantic." "And you're glowing," Marcus observed. "I've never seen you like this. She must be special." "She really is." That evening, Valdis picked Fiona up from work in a car that probably cost more than Fiona's annual salary. She drove them to a private art gallery that had been closed for the evening but opened specifically for them. "I wanted to share something with you," Valdis said as they walked through rooms full of masterpieces. "These are pieces from my personal collection. I have been collecting for centuries, preserving beauty that might otherwise have been lost." Fiona wandered through the gallery in awe. There were paintings by artists she'd only read about, sculptures that belonged in major museums, artifacts from civilizations long dead. Each piece was displayed with obvious care and deep respect. "This is incredible," Fiona breathed, stopping in front of a Renaissance painting that took her breath away. "Valdis, this is priceless, all of this." "Beauty should be preserved," Valdis said simply. Treasured, protected, much like you. Fiona turned to find Valdis watching her instead of the art. You're comparing me to priceless masterpieces? I am saying that you are more valuable to me than any object, no matter how rare or beautiful. Valdis moved closer. These pieces have given me pleasure over the centuries, but you, Fiona, you give me joy. There is a profound difference. Fiona's eyes stung with tears. How are you real? I could ask the same of you. Valdis reached out slowly, telegraphing her movement, and wiped a tear from Fiona's cheek with her thumb. You are crying. Have I upset you? No, I'm just overwhelmed, happy, a little scared of how fast I'm falling for you. Would it help if I admitted I fell the moment I saw you? Valdis asked. That every day since has only solidified my certainty that you are the one soul meant for mine? That's insane, Fiona said, but she was smiling. And yes, it helps. They spent hours in the gallery, Valdis explaining the history behind each piece, Fiona sharing her professional observations about technique and preservation. Their conversation flowed easily, naturally, like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. When Valdis finally drove Fiona home, she walked her upstairs as always. But this time, when they reached Fiona's door, Fiona gathered her courage. Would you like to come in? For more than just tea, I mean. Valdis went very still. Fiona, you do not need to rush anything for my sake. I'm not rushing. I'm following my instincts, and my instincts say I want you to stay. Really stay. Are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Valdis smiled, soft and genuine and full of promise. Then yes, I would very much like to come in. What followed was tender and careful and absolutely perfect. Valdis treated Fiona like she was made of spun glass, every touch reverent, every kiss worshipful. She whispered endearments in languages Fiona didn't understand, and when Fiona gasped her name, Valdis looked at her like she had just witnessed something holy. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Fiona's bed, Valdis's cool skin pressed against Fiona's warmth. The vampire lord traced lazy patterns on Fiona's shoulder, her expression peaceful in a way Fiona had never seen before. What are you thinking? Fiona asked sleepily. That I was wrong earlier, Valdis said softly. This was worth waiting more than 7 centuries for. Fiona smiled against Valdis's shoulder. Good thing you're immortal then. You have excellent patience, not when it comes to you. With you I want everything, immediately. I want to show you worlds and wonders. I want to keep you safe and make you laugh and watch you work on the art you love. I want centuries with you, Fiona. I want forever. The word forever should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt right. I'm not immortal, Fiona reminded her gently. I'm human, fragile, temporary. Valdis's expression grew serious. There are ways to change that if you ever wished it. But that is a conversation for much later, when you have had time to understand what you would be giving up and what you would be gaining. For now, I simply want to treasure every moment I have with you, however many that may be. Okay, Fiona agreed, then yawned. Sorry, human here, need sleep. Then sleep. My starlight, I will watch over you. That's slightly creepy, you know. I prefer to think of it as romantic. Fiona laughed and let herself drift off, safe in the arms of a vampire lord who had destroyed an entire bar to protect her. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Fiona officially moved into Valdis's residence after her lease ended, into rooms that quickly filled with her books and art supplies, and the small touches that made a space home. She continued working at the museum but now had access to Valdis's extensive collection for private study, which elevated her research considerably. Valdis introduced Fiona to vampire society gradually. First came Valdis's inner circle, her second in command, Seraphine, who had ice blue eyes and a surprisingly warm smile, her chief of security, Draven, whose name matched his severe demeanor, and her advisor, Lucian, who seemed ancient even by vampire standards. All of them treated Fiona with utmost respect, though Fiona suspected that was more about fearing Valdis than anything else. Still, over time, genuine friendships formed. Seraphine shared Fiona's love of art and would often visit to discuss techniques and history. Draven taught Fiona self-defense, insisting that while Valdis's protection was formidable, Fiona should be able to defend herself. And Lucian, surprisingly, became something of a mentor, sharing his vast knowledge of supernatural politics and history. You're good for her, Lucian told Fiona one evening when Valdis was occupied with territory business. I have known Valdis for 4 centuries and I have never seen her like this. Happy, settled, at peace. She's good for me too, Fiona admitted. I know some people would say this relationship is crazy, but it feels right. The recognition is rarely wrong, Lucian said. When it happens, it is because 2 souls genuinely complement each other. Trust in that. 4 months into their relationship, Valdis took Fiona to the vampire court. It was held in an underground palace beneath the city, a sprawling complex of marble halls and soaring ceilings lit by chandelier made of crystal and what looked like captured starlight. This is where the territorial lords meet to discuss policy and settle disputes, Valdis explained as they walked through halls filled with vampires who bowed as Valdis passed. I wanted you to see this part of my world to understand what my responsibilities entail. The throne room was massive, with 7 thrones arranged in a semicircle, each representing a territory. Valdis's throne was carved from black marble and inlaid with silver, positioned in the center as befitting the head of the council. You run this? Fiona asked, awed. We make decisions collectively, but yes, I chair the council. Valdis guided her toward the throne, then surprised Fiona by sitting and gently pulling her down to sit sideways in her lap. And as my recognized mate, you have the right to sit at my side during proceedings. Several vampires in the hall murmured at this, but none objected. I thought you said we were taking this slow, Fiona whispered. Valdis's smile was subtle but genuine. We took it slow, but now I want the entire vampire world to understand that you are mine and I am yours. No ambiguity, no question. Possessive much? Extraordinarily so, Valdis agreed without shame. You knew this about me. A vampire approached the throne, bowing low. Lord Valdis, there is a matter requiring your judgment. What followed was fascinating. Fiona watched as Valdis adjudicated a dispute between 2 vampires over territory boundaries, listened to reports about human-vampire incidents, and discussed policy changes with other council members who arrived throughout the evening. Valdis was commanding and fair, her judgment swift but considered. She radiated authority, and every vampire in the room clearly respected her. But between each matter, Valdis would turn to Fiona, checking that she was comfortable, explaining context, making sure she understood what was happening. The dual nature of the powerful lord and devoted partner was striking. Near the end of the session, a vampire Fiona didn't recognize approached the throne. He was dark-haired with golden eyes, and something about him set off alarm bells. Lord Valdis, he said, his tone respectful but with an edge. I bring concerns from the Western Territories. There are those who question the wisdom of a human holding such high status in our world. The temperature in the room dropped. Valdis's expression went cold. Explain, she said quietly, and the word carried threat. Some feel that humans are meant to be kept at arm's length, that showing such favor to one could upset the careful balance we maintain with their world. The vampire's golden eyes flicked to Fiona. It sets a dangerous precedent, I see. Valdis stood and Fiona quickly moved to stand beside her. And who precisely shares these concerns? Lord Constantine of the Western Territories believes Constantine. Valdis's voice dripped disdain. That explains much. Tell Constantine that he may bring his concerns to me directly if he dares. But he should know that any threat to Fiona Owens, any attempt to undermine her position, any whisper of harm against her, will be met with my full response. And I remind you all what my response looks like. Everyone in the room remembered. The destroyed bar had become legend in vampire circles. Furthermore, Valdis continued, her voice ringing with authority, I am invoking the ancient right of bond claim. Fiona Owens is not merely under my protection. She is my recognized mate, and I am formally announcing my intention to complete the bonding ritual. She will become vampire, if she chooses, and she will stand as my equal in all things. Any who challenge this challenge me directly, and they will face me in the traditional manner. The room erupted. Vampires were speaking rapidly, some looking shocked, others pleased, a few clearly unhappy. Fiona grabbed Valdis's hand. What did you just do? I made our relationship official in every way empire law recognizes, Valdis said calmly, though her hand squeezed Fiona's, and I offered you the choice to become vampire yourself if you wish it. You could have discussed this with me first. You are right, I apologize. Valdis turned to fully face her, ignoring the chaos in the throne room. But Constantine's challenge forced my hand. I will not allow anyone to use you to undermine me, or worse, to threaten you. This way you are protected by every law we have. Fiona took a deep breath. She wasn't actually angry, just overwhelmed. Okay, we're talking about this later. In privately. Valdis dismissed the council and swept Fiona out of the throne room, moving so fast that the world blurred. They ended up back in Valdis's private chambers, and the moment the door closed, Valdis slumped slightly. I am sorry, she said again. I should not have made that announcement without consulting you first. I simply could not bear the thought of someone threatening you, even indirectly. Fiona cupped Valdis's face in her hands, making the taller woman look at her. I'm not mad, surprised but not mad, but we do need to talk about this bonding thing and what it means, of course. Valdis led her to the sitting area, and they settled together on a velvet couch. The bonding ritual is how recognized mates complete their connection. It involves an exchange of blood and a formal oath witnessed by the council. Once bonded, we would be linked, able to sense each other's emotions, find each other no matter the distance. And if you chose to complete the transformation, you would become vampire, immortal, Fiona said. Yes, like you. Fiona was quiet for a long moment. What would I be giving up? Sunlight, though you could learn to tolerate brief exposure with age and power. Your human family would age and die while you remained unchanged. You would need blood to survive. You would be bound by vampire law and involved in vampire politics. Your entire world would change. And what would I gain? Valdis's expression softened. Centuries with me. Time to pursue your art without the pressure of a short human lifespan. Strength, speed, abilities you cannot currently imagine. A place of honor in our society. And the bond itself, which is said to be the most profound connection two beings can share. Have you ever been bonded before? Never. I have never experienced the recognition before, so I have never had the opportunity. Fiona leaned back, processing. This is a huge decision, it is. Which is why I am not pressuring you for an answer. The bond claim I announce simply formalizes our relationship status and extends maximum legal protection to you. The actual bonding ritual cannot happen unless both parties consent. You could remain human and simply be recognized as my mate if you prefer. But you'd want me to choose immortality, Fiona guessed. I would be lying if I said otherwise, Valdis admitted. The thought of watching you age and die while I continue on is agony. But I will not force this choice. Your autonomy, your right to decide your own fate, is paramount. Fiona reached for Valdis' hand, threading their fingers together. I need time to think about it. Really think, not just react. Take all the time you need. Even if I decide to stay human? Valdis's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Even then, I love you, Fiona. That does not come with conditions or ultimatums. I will take whatever you can give me for as long as you can give it. It was the first time Valdis had said she loved her directly. Fiona felt her heart clench. I love you too, she whispered. I have for a while now. I was just scared to say it. Valdis pulled her close, and they held each other in the quiet of the chamber, the weight of immortal choices hanging between them. Over the next few weeks, Fiona threw herself into research. She interviewed bonded vampire couples, asking about their experiences with the transformation and the bond itself. She consulted with vampire scholars about the process, the risks, the long-term implications. She spoke with her human family, carefully avoiding any mention of vampires but trying to gauge how they'd feel about her moving far away for a long time. Her parents were supportive but worried. Her younger brother joked that she was in a cult. Only her elderly aunt seemed to understand something deeper was happening. You've found someone extraordinary, haven't you? Aunt Margaret said during a visit. Someone who makes you feel alive in ways you never have before. How did you know? Because you're glowing, dear, and you have that look, the one I had when I met your uncle. Like the world has shifted and suddenly everything makes sense. Margaret patted her hand. If this person makes you happy, truly happy, then follow your heart. Life is too short for regrets. Life is too short. The words haunted Fiona. But it didn't have to be, did it? She could have centuries. With Valdis. Pursuing her passion for art. Learning from masters across ages. Building something meaningful. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She was still wrestling with the decision when everything went wrong. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Fiona was working late at the museum, cataloging a new acquisition. She'd texted Valdis to let her know she'd be late, and Valdis had promised to pick her up at 9. At 8:30, the museum's lights went out. Fiona looked up from her work, frowning. The emergency generators should have kicked in immediately. When they didn't, alarm bells started ringing in her mind. Hello, she called out, gathering her things. Is anyone there? Silence. Fiona pulled out her phone to call Valdis, but there was no signal, which was impossible. The museum had excellent reception. Something was very wrong. She moved toward the exit, trying to stay calm. But before she'd taken 3 steps, figures emerged from the shadows. 3 men, all dressed in black, all moving with a grace that screamed vampire. Fiona Owens, one of them said. You're coming with us. Like hell I am. Fiona backed away, remembering Draven's self-defense lessons. Valdis will destroy you for this. Lord Constantine is willing to take that risk, another said. He believes that removing you will weaken Lord Valdis's position. Constantine, the vampire who'd challenged her relationship with Valdis at the council. This is insane, Fiona said, still backing away. Kidnapping me won't accomplish anything. Won't it? Lord Valdis will have to choose between her mate and her territory. If she comes for you, she'll be leaving her lands undefended. If she doesn't, her reputation as protector will be shattered. The vampire smiled coldly. Either way, we win. Fiona's mind raced. She had to get word to Valdis somehow. Had to buy time. Valdis will know immediately that something's wrong, she said. She'll sense it through our bond. It was a lie they weren't fully bonded yet, but the vampires didn't need to know that. We have wards blocking such connections, the lead vampire said, moving closer. You are quite alone, little human. Now come quietly, and you won't be harmed. Fiona did the only thing she could think of. She screamed and ran. She made it to the next gallery before cold hands grabbed her. She fought, kicking and thrashing, but vampire strength was impossible to overcome. Something sharp pricked her neck, and the world started to swim. No, she gasped as paralysis spread through her limbs. No, don't worry, one of the vampires said as darkness closed in. We're not going to kill you. You're much more useful alive." Fiona's last conscious thought was of Valdis, and a desperate hope that somehow the vampire lord would find her. Valdis knew something was wrong the moment she arrived at the museum and found it dark. Every instinct she'd honed over 7 centuries screamed danger. She moved through the building like lightning, finding signs of struggle in the gallery where Fiona had been working. And she found Fiona's phone, deliberately left behind with a message on the screen. "Come to the old warehouse at Pier 17 if you want her back. Come alone or she dies." K. Constantin, the rage that flooded through Valdis was nuclear. The air around her crackled with power and every glass surface in the museum shattered. She pulled out her own phone with shaking hands and called Seraphine. "Constantin has taken Fiona," she bit out. "Gather everyone, we're going to war." "My lord, if this is a trap, I don't care if it's a trap. They took her, Seraphine. They touched what is mine. We'll be ready in 20 minutes. Make it 10. Valdis hung up and stood in the wreckage of the museum gallery, forcing herself to think strategically despite the fury threatening to consume her. Constantine wanted her weakened, distracted. He thought taking Fiona would make her reckless. He was wrong, it made her deadly. By the time Valdis arrived at Pier 17, she had a small army behind her. Every loyal vampire in her territory had answered the call, ready to fight for their lord. Draven stood at her right hand, Seraphine at her left, both of them armed and furious. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and silent. "I'm going in," Valdis announced. "We're coming with you," Draven said immediately. "No, he'll kill her if he sees a group." "I go alone, my lord, that is an order." Valdis looked at her people, saw their loyalty and concern. "But be ready, if I need you I will signal, and when I do, show no mercy." She walked into the warehouse alone, every sense on high alert. The vast space was dim, lit only by a few bare bulbs. And there in the center was Fiona. She was tied to a chair, unconscious, and the sight of her like that made Valdis's vision go red. "Valdis, how good of you to come." Constantine stepped from the shadows, flanked by a dozen vampires. He was golden-eyed and arrogant, everything Valdis despised. "As you can see, your little human is unharmed. For now, release her." Valdis's voice was flat, emotionless, the calm before annihilation. "Release her and I will make your death quick." Constantine laughed. "You're in no position to make threats. I have 24 vampires here. You came alone. And if you make one wrong move, we'll drain her dry before you can reach us." "You have made a fatal error," Valdis said softly. "You assumed I would follow your rules." She raised her hand and power exploded outward from her like a shockwave. Ancient power, the kind that only vampire lords of her age and strength possessed. It slammed into Constantine's vampires, sending them flying like rag dolls. Valdis was already moving, faster than thought, racing toward Fiona. She reached the chair and tore through the ropes with her bare hands, catching Fiona as she slumped forward. "I have you," she whispered. "I have you, my love." Behind her, Constantine was shouting orders, and his vampires were recovering. Valdis turned, cradling Fiona against her chest, and her eyes burned crimson. "You touched her," she said, and her voice echoed with ancient power. "You dared to harm what is mine. For that there is no forgiveness." She raised her free hand again, and this time she didn't hold back. Raw power flooded the warehouse, a force of destruction that made the bar incident look like a warning shot. Concrete cracked. Steel beams shrieked and twisted. The very foundations of the building began to crumble. Constantine's vampires tried to flee, but Valdis's people had surrounded the warehouse. There was nowhere to run. Valdis lowered Fiona gently to the ground, checking her pulse. Still alive. Still breathing. Relief flooded through her, followed by renewed fury. She stood and walked toward Constantine, who was now backing away, fear finally showing on his face. "You wanted to see what I would do for her," Valdis said. "Let me show you." What followed was brutal and swift. Valdis dismantled Constantine's forces with centuries of skill and overwhelming power. She didn't kill unnecessarily. Those who surrendered were spared, but Constantine himself received no mercy. "You gambled with the life of my mate," Valdis said, holding him by the throat. "You thought you could use her as a pawn. You were wrong." Constantine tried to speak, but Valdis's grip tightened. "By the ancient laws I could execute you here and now, but I am not without honor. You will face trial before the full council. You will be judged for kidnapping, for breaking sacred protection laws, for attempting to start a territory war, and you will spend centuries paying for your crimes." She threw him toward Draven. "Bind him, he's going to court." Then Valdis was back at Fiona's side, gathering her into her arms. Fiona was starting to wake, her eyelids fluttering. "Valdis?" Her voice was groggy, confused. "I'm here, you're safe. They took me. I tried to fight, but shh, you did everything right. I'm so proud of you." Valdis pressed her lips to Fiona's forehead. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "What happened?" "I destroyed everything that threatened you," Valdis said simply. "And I always will." As they left the collapsing warehouse, Fiona leaned heavily on Valdis, still processing everything. Around them, vampires were securing prisoners and ensuring no humans witnessed the aftermath. You really do destroy buildings for me, Fiona mumbled. Despite everything, Valdis smiled. It's becoming a habit. I love you. Did I mention that? You did, but I will never tire of hearing it. Fiona stopped walking, tugging on Valdis's arm. When the vampire lord turned to look at her, Fiona's expression was serious. I've made my decision, Fiona said. About the bonding, about everything. Valdis went very still. You have? Tonight made me realize something. Life is short and it can be stolen at any moment. But if I have the chance to make it longer, to spend centuries with you, to keep experiencing this love we have, I'd be crazy not to take it. Fiona, you don't have to decide now. You've been through trauma. I'm deciding now, Fiona interrupted. And my decision is yes. I want the bond. I want immortality. I want forever with you. Valdis's expression crumbled into something raw and vulnerable. Are you certain? More certain than I've ever been about anything. Valdis pulled her into a fierce embrace, burying her face in Fiona's neck. I will make you so happy, she promised. I will spend every century proving you made the right choice. I know you will. They stood there in the ruins of the warehouse holding each other, while around them chaos slowly transformed into order. The bonding ceremony took place 1 month later, giving Fiona time to prepare and say proper goodbyes to her family. She told them she was moving abroad for an extended period, which wasn't entirely untrue. She was moving into a different existence entirely. The ceremony itself was held in the throne room beneath the city with the full vampire council in attendance. Fiona wore a gown of midnight blue that made her look like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale, and Valdis wore formal black with silver accents that highlighted her otherworldly beauty. The ritual was ancient and binding. Words were spoken in languages long dead, promises made that could never be broken. When it came time for the blood exchange, Valdis bit her own wrist and offered it to Fiona first. Drink, she said softly, and be changed. Fiona pressed her lips to Valdis's wrist and tasted vampire blood for the first time. It was sweet and powerful, sending electricity through her veins. When she pulled back, Valdis cupped her face gently. Now me, the vampire lord said. Valdis bit Fiona's wrist with careful precision, and Fiona felt the pull as her blood was drawn. It should have been painful, but instead it felt intimate, connecting. When Valdis lifted her head, her eyes were blazing red. It is done, she announced to the assembled vampires. Fiona Owens is now Fiona Noctane, bonded mate to the Lord of Eastern Territories. She is vampire in all ways that matter, and she will be accorded every respect and privilege of her station. The transformation took 3 days. Fiona spent them in Valdis's chambers, alternating between fever and chills as her body died and remade itself. Valdis never left her side, holding her through the worst moments, whispering encouragement when Fiona thought she couldn't endure another second. When Fiona finally opened her eyes on the 4th day, the world had changed. Colors were more vivid, sounds more clear. She could hear Valdis's heartbeat slow and steady and sense her emotions through their new bond. Love, relief, joy, all flowing from Valdis to her in waves. How do you feel? Valdis asked, brushing hair from Fiona's face. Different, good different. Fiona sat up slowly, marveling at how easy movement had become. Stronger, you are, and more beautiful than ever, if such a thing is possible. Fiona looked down at her hands and saw pale skin, not quite as white as Valdis's but no longer human-toned. Her fingernails were stronger, sharper. When she looked in the mirror across the room, she barely recognized herself. Her hair had lighter streaks now, not quite white but moving in that direction. And her eyes, are they supposed to be purple? She asked. It's rare but not unheard of, Valdis said. Eye color after transformation often reflects the strength of the bond that created you. Purple suits you. Fiona turned from the mirror to look at Valdis, really look at her, and through the bond she could feel everything the vampire lord, her mate, was feeling. The depth of love, the fierce protectiveness, the overwhelming relief that the transformation had gone well. I can feel you, Fiona whispered. Inside my mind, my heart, I can feel everything. As I feel you. We are bound now, truly. 2 souls sharing one existence. Fiona launched herself at Valdis, kissing her deeply. The kiss was different now, enhanced by vampire senses and the bond thrumming between them. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily despite no longer needing air. So Fiona said, what do we do now? I mean, I'm immortal, we have forever. What do married vampire lords do with eternity? Valdis smiled. Whatever we want. We could travel, see the world as only immortals can. We could expand your art restoration work, give you access to pieces no human scholar has ever touched. We could simply exist together, learning each other across centuries. The possibilities are endless. I like the sound of all of that. Then we will do all of it. But first, there is something important we must attend to. What's that? You need to feed for the first time, and then we need to celebrate your transformation with our friends and family. Valdis stood, offering Fiona her hand. Welcome to immortality, my love. Our forever starts now. Fiona took her hand, feeling the bond pulse with shared emotion. Our forever, she agreed. Over the next few years, Fiona adjusted to her new existence with surprising ease. She learned to control her vampiric abilities, mastered the bloodlust that came with feeding, and took her place at Valdis's side in vampire society. She continued her work in art restoration but now had access to vampire collections spanning millennia, pieces she'd only dreamed of studying as a human. She and Valdis traveled extensively, seeing wonders of the world that most humans never knew existed. They visited vampire courts in Europe, explored ancient ruins that held supernatural significance, and spent long evenings in countless galleries and museums. But their favorite moments were the quiet ones. Evenings spent reading together in their private library, nights walking through the city they'd made their home, dawn approaching while they held each other, safe in their residence before the sun could harm them. The bond between them only grew stronger with time. Fiona learned to sense Valdis's moods from across distances, to send feelings and sometimes even thoughts through their connection. It was intimate in a way she'd never imagined possible, knowing someone so completely and being known in return. 5 years after her transformation, Fiona organized her first major exhibition, a collection of vampire art spanning from ancient civilizations to the modern era. It was held in a special gallery accessible only to the supernatural community, and it was a massive success. Vampires came from around the world to see the work Fiona had curated, and her reputation as a scholar grew. Valdis stood beside her at the opening, radiating pride. "You've done something remarkable," the vampire lord said, watching Fiona explain a piece to a group of interested viewers. "You've created a bridge between human and vampire artistic traditions. No one else has ever attempted this." "I had a good teacher," Fiona said, squeezing Valdis's hand. "And I had forever to pursue the project. That helps. Still, this is extraordinary, Fiona. You are extraordinary." Fiona turned to kiss her mate softly. "So are you. Thank you for giving me this life, this time, this love. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else or with anyone else. Nor could I. You are my greatest treasure, my most precious gift." Valdis pulled her closer. "In 7 centuries of existence, I never truly lived until I found you. You are my heart, my home, my everything." Around them, the gallery bustled with activity, but in that moment they existed in their own private world. Two souls bound together across the divide between human and vampire, mortality and immortality, temporary and eternal. "I love you," Fiona whispered. "And I love you," Valdis replied. "For now and for always, for eternity." As the evening wore on and the exhibition continued to draw acclaim, Fiona found herself reflecting on the strange path her life had taken. From that night in Veil and Velvet, when a vampire lord had destroyed an entire bar to protect her, to this moment, standing as an immortal vampire herself at her own art exhibition. It had been terrifying at times. There had been moments of doubt, periods of adjustment that tested her resolve. But through it all, Valdis had been there, patient and loving and fierce in her devotion. Later that night, after the last guests had departed, and they were alone in the gallery surrounded by centuries of art, Valdis pulled Fiona into her arms. "What are you thinking about, my love?" the vampire lord asked. "Everything. How strange life is. How a single night can change everything." Fiona smiled up at her mate. "How lucky I am that you noticed me that first night I walked into your bar." "I am the lucky one," Valdis corrected gently. "You gave up your mortality for me. You accepted a world of darkness and blood and eternal night. You could have chosen safety, normalcy, a human life. I chose love," Fiona said simply. Everything else was just details. Valdis kissed her then, deep and tender and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, the vampire lord rested her forehead against Fiona's. "Then let us choose love every day for the rest of eternity," Valdis whispered. "Let us build a life filled with beauty and joy and wonder. Let us prove that even creatures of darkness can find light in each other." "Yes," Fiona agreed, feeling the bond between them pulse with shared emotion. To all of that, yes. They left the gallery hand in hand, walking into the night that was now their natural element. Above them, stars glittered in patterns Fiona could now see with perfect clarity. Before them stretched centuries of possibility, of growth, of love. Behind them lay the path that had brought them together, a drugged drink at table 9, a vampire lord's protective fury, a bar destroyed in righteous rage, and a love that had proven stronger than the divide between species. Fiona thought about that night often, about how close she'd come to never knowing Valdis, to missing out on this impossible, beautiful existence. She thought about the man who'd tried to harm her, and how his terrible action had inadvertently catalyzed everything good in her life now. She didn't forgive him. He was still serving his sentence in vampire custody, paying for his crime. But in a strange way, she understood that even darkness could lead to light, that even the worst moments could transform into something meaningful if you survived them. "What are you pondering so deeply?" Valdis asked as they reached their car. "Just thinking about fate. About how everything had to happen exactly as it did for us to end up here. Do you believe in fate then?" "I believe in us," Fiona said, "and I believe that some connections are strong enough to overcome any obstacle. We found each other across the barrier between human and vampire. That has to mean something. It means everything, Valdis said softly. You mean everything. They drove home through streets that were coming alive with nightlife. This was their world now. The hours after sunset when vampires emerged to conduct business, socialize, and live their immortal lives. Fiona had adapted to the nocturnal schedule easily, finding beauty in moonlight and stars that she'd never appreciated as a human rushing through her days. When they reached their residence, an elegant mansion hidden behind high walls and ancient wards, Valdis carried Fiona over the threshold like a bride, despite having done so countless times before. It was a romantic gesture that never got old. Welcome home, Lady Noctane, Valdis said with a playful smile. I'll never get tired of hearing that, Fiona admitted, laughing. They spent the rest of the night in comfortable companionship, reading in the library, discussing plans for Fiona's next project, and simply enjoying each other's presence. These quiet moments were Fiona's favorite. No politics, no obligations, just two people in love sharing space and time. As dawn approached and they retired to their light-proof bedroom, Fiona curled against Valdis's cool body and felt nothing but contentment. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what, my love? For destroying that bar. For being so protective that you literally demolished a building to keep me safe. For loving me enough to give me this choice, this life, this forever. Valdis's arms tightened around her. I would destroy 1,000 bars for you. 1,000 buildings, cities, entire territories if necessary. You are my heart, Fiona. Everything I am, everything I have, it all belongs to you. And you belong to me, Fiona said, feeling the truth of it through their bond. My vampire lord, my mate, my love. Always, Valdis promised. From that first moment I saw you until the end of time itself. I am yours, completely and eternally. They fell asleep wrapped in each other, two souls bound across species and mortality, united by a love that had proven itself stronger than fear, doubt, or any obstacle the world could place between them. And in the centuries that followed, through changes and challenges, through the evolution of human society and the shifting politics of vampire territories, through discoveries and adventures and countless quiet moments, that love never wavered. It grew deeper, richer, more complex, and more simple simultaneously. Fiona never regretted her choice, not once. Every night she woke beside Valdis, every moment they shared, every century they experienced together, confirmed that she had made the right decision that night in the warehouse when she'd chosen forever. And Valdis, who had existed for over 700 years before finding her mate, understood that existence had finally transformed into true life. That every century before Fiona had simply been preparation for the eternity they would share together. They had found each other across impossible odds, and they had built something beautiful from that connection. A partnership of equals, despite the differences in their ages and origins. A love that transcended the ordinary boundaries between human and vampire, mortal and immortal. And it had all started with a destroyed bar, a vampire lord's protective fury, and a human woman brave enough to accept love in its most supernatural form. Their story became legend in vampire circles, the lord who had demolished a building for her mate, and the human who had chosen darkness for love. Young vampires spoke of it in whispers, wondering if they would ever experience such devotion. Older vampires acknowledged it with respect, understanding how rare and precious such a bond truly was. But for Fiona and Valdis, it was simply their life, their normal, beautiful, extraordinary existence together. And as they moved through their endless days and nights, they carried with them the certainty that some loves were worth any price, any sacrifice, any transformation. Theirs was one of those loves, and it would endure, burning bright through centuries of darkness, a beacon of hope for any who witnessed it. Forever, they had promised each other, and forever was exactly what they got.